County Museum. You might hear sounds in the background of the museum, the odd phone ringing, the odd ping of my computer occasionally, but do not be alarmed. I will share my screen and we will begin. There we go. Can you see the Wood County Museum? All right. This photo obviously is the Wood County Museum. I have a little infomercial at the end of this talk about what is new at the museum in case you have not been there. We are starting this series with kind of a history light of Wood County. And the, let's see if I can advance my slide. There we go. The title of this program is called Tales of the Misty Past Part 1. And that image there is Charles Evers. You might have heard of Charles Evers. He was a newspaper man in Bowling Green. Charles Evers was born July 22nd, 1837. He was born in Miltonville, Ohio, on the Maumee River. That town is long gone, but he grew up in the wilderness of Plain Township. That would be Bowling Green West in Section 34. Among other things, Charles Evers taught school in Plain Township. He attended Oberlin College until the Civil War broke out. He served in the Civil War, was wounded, captured, and paroled during that time. He also was elected twice as sheriff of Wood County in 1864, and then he served 2 terms. But what he's most remembered for is he bought half interest in the Sentinel newspaper. By 1870, he was the sole owner. He sold the newspaper, dabbled in business. By 1880, he was the sole owner of the Sentinel newspaper again until he retired in 1884. Charles Evers died in 1909. He is remembered for writing a book called The Pioneer Scrapbook of Wood County, which I'm sure you can get at the library. He also wrote the first 11 chapters of the biographical history of Wood County, 1897. The Beers book is what a lot of people call it, the history of the townships. One of our first vignettes written by Charles Evers was the last bear that was killed within the limits of Wood County. It was the late fall of 1858. There was a nice tracking of snow on the ground, and Washington Avery was out hunting and wounded a deer and was following the wounded deer tracks when he came across a big brown bear poking along the woods. Now, Avery's gun was small, but Charles Evers writes, but Wash did not stop to think of that, but pulled up and blazed away. The bear was wounded in the thigh and ran off in an easterly direction. I don't think Washington Avery was the greatest hunter either. Now, Washington Avery pursued the bear along the Sugar Ridge, where he was met by Joel Ralston and George Walker of that vicinity. And the 3 of them pursued the bear until night, where they stayed at a place called 10 Mile House in Webster Township, north of Scotch Ridge today. Unbeknownst to them, an old hunter named Jake Hedinger and his dogs also saw the wounded bear and began their own pursuit. The party was added by Jess William and a friend. The next day, the party of 6 chased the bear east to the Ottawa County line. There, the bear doubled back and was spotted at the Plank Road in Middleton and Center Townships. The Plank Road is State Route 25, and this is where the hunt began. There, they were aided by William Avery, William Mears, and Benjamin Johnson. The bear turned east again and headed for the Devil's Hole in Webster Township. But its luck ran out and it was surrounded by the 9 hunters. To give you an idea of this 2-day hunt, here is a map. The number 1 starts where the hunt began in Center and Plain Townships along the Plank Road, which we know is State Route 25. They chased to number 2 and 3, where they stayed at the 10 Mile House, pursued it to number 4, the Ottawa County line. There, the bear crossed the McCutcheonville Road at 5, was spotted again at number 6, where the hunt began, and was making its way east to the Devil's Hole marked by number 7. What does he say? Then near the Devil's Hole in Webster Township, Joel Ralston sighted the bear, but his rifle in 1858 failed to shoot. The bear passed Mr. Avery, who was accounting to the impending darkness, only slightly wounded the bear. Finally, the exhausted and wounded bear came within a few feet of Mr. Mears, who placed a .50 caliber ball through its heart. But before the bear finally succumbed to the fatal shot, Charles Evers writes, the bear struck one of the dogs a terrible blow with his paw, knocking him about 20 feet away, howling as if old Nick, that's the devil, was after him. You kind of feel sorry for the bear. What did they do after killing the last bear in Wood County but go to the bar? After consultation, it was decided to take the bear to Thomas's Tavern. I assume this would have been on the Plank Road, State Route 25, somewhere lost in history. Those who felt disposed to do so celebrated the occasion by indulging in a little tanglefoot, after which they divided up the bear, which weighed about 250 pounds. Washington Avery took the hide, after which all went home, tired and worn out, but well pleased with the day's adventure. This is the story of the last big game ever brought down, or which probably ever will be brought down in Wood County. According to the Bowling Green Sentinel Tribune, lately, black bears have been spotted in Seneca and Ottawa, and possibly Wood County as late as 2014. So perhaps another black bear, which has more luck, will come to Wood County. Now, I mentioned, or I should say, Charles Evers mentions the Devil's Hole. We know Devil's Hole Road, but what is the origin of the name? The Devil's Hole, Charles Evers writes, was an almost impenetrable bog, and here's how it got its name. During the year 1813 or 1814, a period when the Black Swamp was yet a howling wilderness, well covered by water and occupied by wolves and bears and wildcats, there was a low, wet, swampy bog within the Great Black Swamp, extending from a portion of Wood County where the Fenton Post Office is now, or was at that time, to a point in Middleton Township, lately known as the Devil's Hole Prairie. Now, he mentions Fenton Post Office. I have a map here. You can see the red line that's above Webster is what we know as Devil's Hole Road. The arrow points to Devil's Hole Prairie, the Devil's Hole, and you can see within that map the Fenton Post Office along the railroad track that ran or I should say the road that ran to Scotch Ridge Post Office. But that is where the Devil's Hole was. Now, its name, at the time of the War of 1812, General William Henry Harrison came plunging through the wilds of Sandusky and Wood County on his march to Fort Meigs. While passing near where the Devil's Hole was, a scout, while on alert for the terror of the forest, became entangled in this man trap, and only after a day's persistence effort did he succeed in getting out. We know General Harrison's park, his encampment at the forks of the Portage River, which is near Pemberville today. Upon being interrogated as to where this scout had been, he replied that he had got lost in asserting that he had truly discovered the home of Satan, the Devil's Hole. Now, this story was finished after Charles Evers, shown there, had died. The late Charles Evers claims, however, that the Devil's Hole was first given the name by Mahlon Meeker. Mahlon Meeker came to Plain Township north of Bowling Green and settled in 1833. Meeker was one of the first settlers to record here, one who is prominently featured in Charles Evers' Pioneer Scrapbook, which gets us to the next vignette. Attacked by wolves. Now, Mahlon Meeker would have been much older than Charles Evers. A young Charles Evers would have heard the stories that Mahlon Meeker would have told him. And the article was Mahlon Meeker's struggle at night with a pack of these animals. The story begins one night as Mr. Meeker was going home. He suddenly heard the howl of a wolf near the trail he was following. This was instantly answered by another wolf, and presently a wolf appeared in front of him. Mahlon Meeker had no means of defense, but walked boldly up to the wolf in the trail when it sprang to one side and joined with two others in the rear, when they all broke out in a deafening, startling chorus of howls. After going a mile or so, he came to where a tree had been blown down and ran to the top to get a stick, while here 4 more wolves joined the chase. On taking the trail again, they were so fierce and bold and approached so close that several times he succeeded in striking one of the wolves with his club. Finally, Mr. Meeker arrived on the ridge at the cabin of Mr. Howard, who had a great fire in his fireplace, the light of which shone through the unchinked cracks of the log cabin, which 2 savage dogs finally scared the wolves off. Mr. Meeker thinks if he had tripped his foot and fallen, they would have all attacked him at once. They were of the large brown species and seemed maddened with hunger in the winter. There was one more animal, or I should say mammal, that was even more dangerous than wolves at this time, other than the mosquito, which carried malaria. It was the wild hogs that roamed this area. At another time, Mr. Meeker was returning home when he heard the wild hogs, coming just in time. He had hastily climbed a small tree as the excited animals gathered beneath him, foaming and gnashing of their teeth. Wild hogs had escaped during the War of 1812, proliferated in this area, and were even more dangerous than wolves at that time, but not as dangerous as the mosquito that carries malaria or ague as the pioneers knew it. Charles Evers died on July 22nd, 1909 at the age of 72. His remains were taken to the Grand Army of the Republic, the Association of Civil War Veterans room at the City Hall in Bowling Green. There, the full ritualistic services of the patriotic order were observed. Flowers were provided by the Maumee Valley Pioneer and Historical Association, which Charles Evers helped found. It is the ancestor of historical societies in Wood County today. His book, The Pioneer Scrapbook, was published in 1910 after his death with the postscript, "Lest we forget." Now, the Wood County Museum's hours, we are open Monday through Friday in January, 10 to 4. After January, we are also open on the weekends from 1 to 4. We have admissions for adults, seniors, veterans, and students. We also have memberships for seniors and students and senior couples and families. If you have not been to the Wood County Museum in a while, we have 3 new large exhibits. At the top left is for comfort and convenience. That is the history of the poor farms in Ohio. We sent a photographer to all 88 counties that had county homes to take pictures of what's left, a fascinating exhibit of the history of this county home, which is the museum, and the county homes in Ohio. At the top right, you'll notice the photographs. That is the people, places, and things. We got out and exhibiting all of the photos in our collection. There are literally thousands of photos of Wood County, some from our time period, some from 100 years before our time period on exhibit. If you ever visited the Wood County Museum years ago, you might remember the hangman's used to execute Karl Bach. We have a new exhibit called the Mary and Karl Bach story. You can see the modern museum quality case there with all the ephemera of the murder and execution, but we also have large panels explaining who Mary and Karl Bach were. Did you know that Mary had married before she married Karl Bach? Who was on the trial, the jury, the timeline of events. In the past, the noose and of course the fingers were randomly placed on a shelf with very little interpretation. Now you will know everything about the story that you never knew about. If you have ever been to the museum, you know that the steps of the old county home are steep and long. We have a fully serviceable elevator. This photo shows outside the building. We have 8 well-marked spots behind the building, very short distance into the very large elevator. You can get 3 wheelchairs and 4 other people in this elevator, and it will take you from outside the building into the first and second floor. All of the little steps within the building are bypassed by ramps. If you know of someone who has not been to the museum in many years because the stairs are so steep and tall, use the elevator while we are open. Another feature of the museum, we also have a gift shop, lots of local history books on exhibit, plus local products. Things are always changing in the gift shop. Like I said, you can see lots of books. Unfortunately, Charles Evers' Pioneer Scrapbook is out of print for us, but you can always check it out at the North Baltimore Library, I'm sure. That is the last slide I have. The next program that we will be doing is Tales of the Misty Past Part 2, a story about Bairdstown, Ohio, very close to North Baltimore. Perhaps you have never heard this story that Charles Evers spins. I hope everybody enjoyed this program. Several months from now, we will also again look at Charles Evers' life and tell the history of Wood County by the way of the life of Charles Evers. And there's part 1 and part 2 of that as well. Thank you for inviting me. I will let our host take over the presentation.